Think that jar of pasta sauce in your pantry is just tomatoes, garlic, and herbs? Think again. In late 2025, the FDA posted a tomato sauce recall tied to a botulism hazard because the products were made without an approved scheduled process. And even when nothing is recalled, the rules still allow a lot of ambiguity on labels, especially around natural and natural flavors. And it gets worse. Today we're counting down the 8 pasta sauce brands you should avoid if you're trying to cut back on chemicals you can't pronounce and the corporate shortcuts that hide behind friendly labels. And at the end, we'll show you the safer swaps and a simple shelf test that can cut your sodium and ingredient risk in under a minute. Let's get into it. Number 8. Great Value Traditional Pasta Sauce. Walmart's Great Value line is designed to feel like the practical choice. Cheap, familiar, good enough. But when you're feeding a household, good enough becomes a daily exposure pattern. Great Value Traditional Pasta Sauce's ingredient list is the first red flag. Tomato puree, diced tomatoes, sugar, soybean oil, salt, spices, and citric acid. That's already a lot for something people assume is just tomatoes. Now zoom out to what you're not being told. The FDA openly publishes defect levels and action guidance for foods, including tomato products, because some contamination is considered unavoidable at scale. That system isn't a scandal by itself. The scandal is how little consumers understand it. If you're buying ultra-cheap sauce built for mass production, you're trusting a system that's optimized for volume first and transparency last. And the corporate accountability line matters here. Walmart's fiscal 25 annual report says the company generated $681.0 billion in total revenues. That's not a company that can't afford better sourcing, cleaner processes, and clearer labeling standards for its house brands. They can't afford it. The question is whether they choose to. Moving on, because number 7 takes the same playbook and adds legal heat. Number 7. Good & Gather Traditional Pasta Sauce. This is Target's own brand. It's positioned as cleaner, more modern, and more thoughtful than bargain store food. But the label story is where the trust starts to fall apart. Target's product listing for Good & Gather Traditional Pasta Sauce includes tomato puree, diced tomatoes, sugar, vegetable oil, cottonseed and/or canola and/or soybean, seasonings, and citric acid. And then the lawsuits hit. In May 2024, a proposed class action, Carbine versus Target Corporation, alleged Target misled consumers by marketing Good & Gather pasta sauces as having no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives, while the products contain citric acid, which the complaint calls a preservative ingredient. In April 2025, another complaint, DeForest versus Target, again challenged similar labeling on multiple Good & Gather pasta sauce varieties. Here's what makes this especially troubling. The FDA itself acknowledges it has not established a formal definition for the term natural through rulemaking, and it relies on a long-standing policy instead. That gray zone is exactly where marketing departments thrive. Target's own annual report shows total 2024 merchandise sales of $104.820 billion. That's the financial power to be transparent without blinking. They can afford clarity, they choose ambiguity, and they fight it out in court when consumers push back. Now, number 6 is the classic Italian jar that hides behind nostalgia. Number 6. Classico Traditional Sweet Basil. Classico is a Kraft Heinz brand, and Kraft Heinz reported $24.942 billion in net sales for the full year 2025. That scale matters because small ingredient choices become national exposure patterns. Look at the label. The ingredient list for Classico Traditional Sweet Basil includes diced tomatoes with citric acid and calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is a firming agent. It helps diced tomatoes hold shape so the sauce looks fresh, longer. Citric acid adjusts acidity and can support shelf stability. Now add the quiet numbers that consumers ignore until it's too late. EWG's product scoring page for this sauce lists 460 milligrams sodium per serving. One serving is not a full plate of pasta. Most people use far more than half a cup. And here's the government framing. Even the older federal dietary guidelines emphasized limiting sodium and added sugars. When a jar of sauce is already hundreds of milligrams per serving, you can blow through your daily target without noticing. Kraft Heinz has the resources to reformulate, reduce sodium, and stop relying on vague, natural language and flavor masking. They simply choose the version that sells easiest. But if you thought that was bad, number 5 is where the label starts to sound home style, while still leaning on the same chemistry. Number 5, Prego Traditional Italian Sauce. Prego is owned by Campbell's, and an SEC-filed exhibit describing Campbell's fiscal 2025 results states net sales increased 6% to $10.3 billion. Again, massive responsibility. Now the ingredient list. Campbell's own product page for Prego Traditional Italian Sauce lists tomato puree, diced tomatoes, sugar, and then salt, oil, spices, basil, and citric acid, plus onion and garlic extracts. This is the exact chemicals you can't pronounce trap. The jar looks like grandma's pantry, but the formula is engineered for shelf performance and repeatable flavor, not simplicity. This is where the regulatory gap shows up again. When companies use umbrella terms like spices and flavors, you don't get to see the real formulation logic. The federal definition of natural flavor is broad and technical, and it allows a lot of complexity behind 2 words on a label. And the accountability. Line is simple. A company selling billions of dollars of meals can afford cleaner ingredient strategies and clearer labeling. They choose the cheapest path that keeps consumers calm. Now, before we continue with number 4, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell us which pasta sauce brand you've trusted for years. You might be surprised to see it on this list. And if this is valuable, hit like and share it with someone who cooks pasta weekly. Number 4, Barilla Marinara. Barilla leans hard on Italian credibility, and it works. But read the label like an investigator, not like a fan. One published ingredient list for Barilla's marinara includes tomatoes, onion, sugar, herbs, citric acid, acidity regulator, and, quietly, natural flavor. Natural flavor is not a single ingredient. It is a legal category. And the consumer doesn't get the details. Now the legal track record. Barilla has faced litigation over labeling claims tied to its pasta sauces in the past, including a complaint that targeted no preservatives messaging, while sauces contained citric acid. Even if an individual case is old, the pattern is current. Trade coverage and legal analysis in 2024 and 2025 describe an ongoing wave of citric acid and no preservatives class actions hitting packaged foods, including tomato-based sauces. And the corporate power behind this matters. Barilla's own FAQ states the group's 2024 turnover was approximately 4.9 billion euros. They have the resources to be radically transparent. They choose the minimum disclosure the law allows. Now we're into the top 3, and this is where chemicals you can't pronounce turns into corporate decisions you can't excuse. Number 3, Emeril's Homestyle Marinara Pasta Sauce. This one is a perfect example of how celebrity branding becomes a shield. A jar can look premium, while the formula is still built for industrial shelf life. Product listings for Emeril's Homestyle Marinara show tomato puree, diced tomatoes with citric acid, sugar, soybean oil, salt, spices, garlic powder, and more. And the lawsuit angle is real. Court filings in Menando versus B&G Foods Incorporated, 1:23C V08087, describe claims that no preservatives representations on certain pasta sauce products were misleading because the sauces contained citric acid. Industry reporting in early 2024 also summarized how citric acid labeling disputes have expanded across food categories, including Emerald-branded pasta sauces. B&G Foods' own investor page states it had $1.93 billion in net sales in 2024. They have the money to clean up label language and ingredient strategies. But the marketing value of no preservatives sells jars. So the fight happens after the sale, in court filings most shoppers will never read. Number 2. Chef Boyardee spaghetti sauce with meat. This is where the ingredient list stops looking like food and starts looking like a manufacturing plan. One published ingredient list includes tomatoes, beef, carrots, high fructose corn syrup, modified cornstarch, soybean oil, textured vegetable protein with caramel color, and citric acid. That's not tomato sauce. That's a stabilized, sweetened, thickened system designed to taste consistent after months on a shelf. Now, the corporate ownership shift matters. In June 2025, Conagra announced it completed the divestiture of the Chef Boyardee brand to Hometown Food Company, a Brynwood Partners portfolio company. A report on the deal described Hometown Foods' annual revenue as about $1.6 billion after the acquisition. So this isn't a struggling brand with no options. It's a billion-dollar operation selling one of the most processed pasta night products in America. And here's the brutal truth. When you see modified anything, color and flavor masking alongside added sweeteners, you're not buying sauce. You're buying correction. You're buying a formula designed to overcome low-cost inputs and long storage. Hometown Food Company has the resources to move away from the most industrial ingredient strategies. The question is whether they want to, or whether cheap and shelf-stable stays the business model. Now, number 1 is the most dangerous kind of pasta sauce scandal, because it's not about marketing, it's about process failure. Number 1. First and last jarred tomato sauces. In October 2025, the FDA posted a company announcement. First and Last Bakery, LLC, recalled First and Last brand tomato sauce products due to the potential for Clostridium botulinum hazard because the products were manufactured without an approved schedule. The products listed include marinara sauce, puttanesca sauce, and meat-flavored pasta sauce. Botulism is not a stomachache. It can be fatal. And unlike many foodborne hazards, the toxin can exist without obvious spoilage. This is where the scheduled process language matters. Acidified foods have specific federal requirements for establishing scheduled processes and filing process information with the FDA. The rules are technical, but the idea is simple. Low acid or improperly processed foods create a perfect environment for deadly toxins. Here's the uncomfortable truth. This isn't a giant public company with an easy revenue figure to quote. It's a private business, and its revenue isn't publicly disclosed. That lack of transparency makes accountability harder, not easier. And it proves the bigger point of this entire list. When food safety depends on behind-the-scenes process controls, you are vulnerable the moment a company decides to cut corners, skip expertise, or move fast without approvals. If you want a single reason to stop trusting labels and start checking facts, this is it. So what can you do? How do you protect yourself? First, stop shopping by front label vibes. Turn the jar around and read the ingredient list like a checklist. If you see citric acid plus vague terms like natural flavor, plus multiple oils, plus added sugar, you're looking at a formula designed for shelf behavior, not simplicity. Second, set a sodium rule before you even pick a brand. If a sauce is already hundreds of milligrams per serving, your healthy pasta night can quietly become a sodium bomb. Use the nutrition panel and compare per serving. And remember, most people pour more than the serving size. The federal dietary guidelines have long emphasized limiting sodium and added sugars. Third, choose transparency over marketing claims. Natural is not a formal FDA-defined term in rulemaking. That's not our opinion, that's the FDA's own statement. If your buying decision depends on the word natural, you're buying into a loophole. Fourth, for the safest, cleanest baseline, skip pasta sauce entirely and build your own 2-ingredient foundation. Plain crushed tomatoes, or passata, and your own garlic, salt, and herbs. It takes 5 minutes. It's cheaper per serving, and it removes the entire category of mystery flavor systems. Fifth, if you want a true store-bought shortcut, pick sauces with the shortest list you can find. Tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, herbs, salt. And if the jar uses natural flavor to do the heavy lifting, put it back. That term has a legal definition, but it's still a black box for consumers. Sixth, take recalls seriously, especially for jarred tomato products. The first and last recall is the nightmare scenario. Botulism risk tied to process failure. When the FDA language says manufactured without an approved schedule, that's not a minor paperwork issue. That's the difference between safe acid control and a toxin risk. Here's the pattern. The pasta sauce aisle is full of products engineered for shelf stability, repeatable taste, and maximum sales. Not minimal ingredients. Not maximum transparency. And the corporations behind these brands have billions in revenue. They could afford
cleaner formulas and clearer labels. They choose the cheapest version of acceptable. You deserve to know what's in your food. Your family deserves protection. And the companies selling sauces built on loopholes, vague labels, and industrial additives deserve to be held accountable. If this video helped you, share it with a friend who keeps pasta night on repeat. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next investigations into everyday foods hiding uncomfortable secrets. Remember, the truth is not always on the label.